I'm going to talk about completing the square. And this is a topic that always gives algebra students trouble. When I say completing the square, what I mean is algebraically, what numbers could I insert into this equation to kind of complete this square, to kind of make this a perfect square trinomial that I could factor down into something nice and easy. So I'm sort of forcing my equation to adjust to make it easier to work on. So here's an example. It says complete the square to find the center and radius of this equation. And really, the first thing we want to do here is just kind of clean it up, kind of organize everything just to make it a little bit less scary to work on. So what I'm going to do is just rearrange, get all my x's in one place, all my y's in one place, and this constant, this number by itself. All right. So I'm just going to rewrite this. I'm going to start by putting x squared first. My other x term is plus 2x. And then next up with the y's, so plus y squared. And you might notice that this 24y, this is kind of on the wrong side of the equation. So what I want to do is subtract this over minus 24y. I want to subtract that over just so I can keep all of my y's together. And then last, I'll just bring down the minus 120. All right, so now I've kind of cleaned this up. I've organized it. It'll be a little bit easier to work with. The trick for completing the square is you're going to look at your coefficients. So I would look at this number, I would look at that number, and kind of the magic trick here is you take half that number and square it, and it makes everything factor down nice and easy. So for the x's, if I look at that coefficient, let me rewrite this, x squared plus 2x. So if I look at this coefficient, I'm going to use half of that squared. So half of 2 is 1, and I'm just going to write 1 squared. I know that 1 times 1 is 1, but I'm just going to leave that there to kind of help you out. For the y's, same thing. I'll just bring down the y squared. I'll bring down the 24y. And again, I'm looking at this coefficient, this minus 24, and what I'm going to do is just use half of that squared. So I'm using minus 12 squared. And I'll just bring down the negative 120. Okay, so what I've done here is this is going to factor nicely, this is going to factor nicely, but I can't just go around adding random numbers into the equation. I have to keep my equation balanced, or else it's going to give me a false answer. So here I added 1 squared, here I added negative 12 squared. I have to do the same thing to this side of the equation also, so I'm going to do plus 1 squared and minus 12 squared also on this side of the equation, just to keep it balanced. Okay, so let's go ahead and factor the x's. If I were to look at x squared plus 2x plus 1, right, 1 times 1 is just 1. If I were to factor that, this is called a perfect square trinomial. This would factor to x plus 1 squared. All right, if I were to factor these y's, so here I've got y squared minus 24y minus 12 squared, so minus 144. If I were to factor this, so just really quick, if I factor that, I would get x minus 12, x minus 12, and you might notice that that's kind of the same number. This is the same number as right here. So I kind of saved myself a step by not squaring this. So let's go ahead and rewrite that. So this is just going to factor to y minus 12 squared. All right, and again, you could write that as minus 144, factor that, but I just know that whatever this number is, it's going to be the same number here. So I'm kind of saving myself a step. All right, so we have our x's done, our y's are done. Let's just finish up with these constants, these numbers over here. What I need to do is just kind of bring this down. So negative 120. Let me do it like this. Let's just add these together. So negative 120, 1 squared is 1. So this will just be plus 1. Minus 12 squared is 144. All right, so this is plus 1. There we go. This is minus 144. So if I do, this is plus 144. Negative 12 times negative 12 is positive 144. So if I do 144 plus 1, I get 145. Minus 120 is going to give me positive 25. All right, and that's basically our answer. You might recognize this equation now. This is in Here we go. This is the equation of a circle. It's in standard form, so I can easily just look. I can look at this equation, just pull out that center and that radius. So for example, the center I know I can get by looking at these two numbers and taking the opposite of these. All right. So for the center, I'm just going to put C. C for center is -1, positive 12. All right. So these signs change due to the formula of a circle. These signs change. For the radius, I'm just going to look at the constant. I'm looking at the number by itself, 25. And just remember from that lesson, the radius is not 25, but the radius is the square root of 25, which is 5. All right, so very easily, once we get into this form, I can just pull out the center radius. Really, the hard part is completing the square to make it nice and neat. When I go to graph this circle, so the center now is at -1, positive 12, so right about there would be the center. And to get the radius, I just count out 5. So I would count out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In every direction, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Same thing this way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I could make a circle by connecting these dots, just like that. For me, I'm kind of bad at connecting dots, so I'm just going to use my circle tool, cheating here a little bit. I'm just going to use my circle tool, and this will make a nice circle for me. And there we go. So our center is, again, -112. The radius here is 5, and I got that just by cleaning up that equation by completing the square.